Hi, everyone. It is the 12th of October, 2018, and this is the Quantum Healing with Candace show, and I'm Candace Craw-Goldman, your host. And today I'm really excited to welcome quantum healer Debbie Smartt from Washington State. And we're going to talk to Debbie in just a moment, but I want to tell you first how excited I am about this show, because Debbie and I are going to talk not only about quantum healing, but we're going to talk about something very specific about quantum healing, and that's doing it online via something like Zoom or Skype, or some people even do it by telephone. So I'm really excited about the show coming up. But before we get started even introducing Debbie, I want to thank Greg Prescott and N5D.com for sponsoring this show and allowing us to introduce quantum healers, their stories, and all of the wonderful things going on in the world of quantum healing across the world because of their sponsorship. Thank you so much, Greg Prescott. Okay, so without any further ado, welcome Debbie Smartt. Thanks for being with us today, Debbie.
Oh, hi, Candace. It's wonderful. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
I'm just so excited. Now, you and I haven't talked together like this before, but you've been in our community for quite some time, haven't you? When did you come on board with the original Quantum Healing Support Forum?
I think it was about 2015.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess you must have probably taken a class with Dolores Cannon. When did you do that, and how did you discover Dolores, and how did you get into this work altogether?
That's a lot of questions. I was very interested in regression work when I was way back when, probably almost 30 years ago is when I stepped into it, just through my own desire to heal myself and heal my issues. And then when I moved over to the States, I remarried over here. I did a hypnosis course and got certified with IMDHA. And then started developing my own technique over a period of time. And then I picked up one of Dolores's books, and I thought, wow, this is just so much, seems to be so much deeper than what I was doing. And so I did her online course, and thought it's very similar to what I already developed myself, which is really interesting. And then when I started reading more on the forum about BQH, I was so jazzed and so excited, because prior to signing up and doing the Dolores Cannon course, I had already been doing Skype sessions. And that was because through a friend of mine who had his own show, and he's got a lot of members and things like that. And I had given him a regression. And so he highly recommended me to a lot of his members. And so they were all overseas, everywhere. Right.
And, just saying hi to you earlier today, hearing your accent, even though I've seen your face and we've sort of corresponded like this, I guess I didn't realize that you were from that part of the world and had moved over here. So of course you have a great community and contact with that side of the world. And of course you would be able to communicate with them in this way. So Debbie and I were talking about, along with other members of our forum community, about doing sessions online, and Debbie said the magic words. She said in the forum, I've been doing them for 3 years. And it was at that point I said, Debbie, you and I are going to do a show, and that's why we're doing one today. And I want to hear about some of these stories, some of the session stories that you might have that you have done over these 3 years.
The one that really found fascinating, and it really opened up my mind much more to other dimensions and other planets and things like that as well, was one session I had with a young man, and he lived down in Ohio. So it was a Skype session, of course. And he wanted to go, he just said he was having lots of problems, and just a lot of problems in his life emotionally, and trying to get himself on a spiritual path. Anyway, his past life just absolutely blew me away. Was when what happened was that he was describing that he was coming down from another dimension and from another planet back into the 18th century, when the Black Plague was in full swing. And he and another being came down at that time to find a cure and bring it to humanity. And he landed on one of the islands in the Bermuda Triangle. and there was these sacred trees, and he said it was almost like walnuts type of seeds on them, and they ground them, and it instantly cured people from the plague. But the biggest mistake that he made is that they took it to the Vatican. And back then they were burning people as witches for healing and all that sort of thing. So then they had to race for their lives. And they went back to this island, made up a batch before the Vatican could catch up with them and kill them, because they knew that their life was threatened. And they put them in time capsules. And they had them sent out to different parts of the world. And then what really blew my mind was they called in the whales, and the whales opened up a portal and took them back.
Oh my goodness, what a fabulous story. So, wow, so how did they, if they were in an island, how did they get to the Vatican?
You know what, I wished I'd asked.
I was sort of going, okay, wait, it's the 18th century, so how did they get here? So,
maybe, who knows, or who knows whether they could buy it.
Of course. Wow, what a great story. I still have some more questions. I bet our listeners might as well. So they found kind of a cure, and they wanted to share the cure with humanity. And they went to, of course, a powerful group that they thought might assist, which I guess they got a surprise there. But how about this? Did you ask, or did you even, if they came from another dimension, how did they know, or why did they come, or were they sent to help find a cure, or what? I mean,
they were sent with already knowing that where the cure was, and they were sent down by the Council of 13.
Wow.
And what was interesting too is he said even if they got to a person, if they just died and put that into their mouth and dissolved in there, because it'd still be some way of dissolving, it'll bring them back to life. So it was like the tree of life.
Wow. So I wonder, does humanity have knowledge of this substance today?
No.
How interesting. How really, really interesting. So past even the session story for this fella, was that relevant in his life? Did he learn more about his, the context of that in his own life? And did he, manage to make some changes or betterments in his current life?
It completely changed his life, and it opened up something, and he realized that he was here for, again, at this time for humanity. And he's reading the Akashic records and everything now. He's really opened up over that happened probably about 3 or 4 years ago, that session. And he said it changed his life, and now he's really working out there, reading the Akashic records for people. He's actually living in Mount Shasta right now, and driven to do these grids with crystals and stones and rocks and everything to help shift some of the energy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people doing that. This is a great story and a great illustration to people who are considering having a session. That, yeah, it's sometimes just having a session, even if it answers some questions or solves a riddle or whatever in their lives, it simply kind of opens something up, right? And something shifts in the person, and their whole life can go into a new and different direction. Well, that's a great story. How about any great healing stories you might have had with an online session that you might want to share?
I've had, a person who, like, I've had people who've had fear of heights, and the past life regression took that person to back into Scotland when the English were invading, and they were riding a horse trying to protect their village, and they were forced off the cliff on their horses, and he fell to his death. And he was from New Zealand, and he was over here visiting his sister who knew about my work. And so I got a call when he got back to New Zealand, because he said it was getting worse. His fear of heights was getting so fearful that he was almost too scared to get on a plane to come over to visit her. So we set up a Skype session, and so when he went through the memory of that, of him falling and everything, then we got his higher self to come in and clear the negative imprinting out of his cellular memory, out of his energy field through all timelines. And then I got feedback several weeks later that he felt completely different, and the fear had gone. So that's one other great thing. I had another one who had contacted me. He was in Australia, and he had some anger management problems, and he was being under a psychiatrist for something like 10 years. And what happened was the psychiatrist said that his anger was getting so bad that he was scared that he was going to become a homicidal maniac. That was the words he used. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do that.
Yeah, wow.
But then I just went, people come to you for a reason and drawn to you for a reason. And I felt that obviously for him to seek somebody else away from a psychiatrist, and back at that time too, especially in Australia, it wasn't as well accepted as it is here. And anyway, so I did 3 sessions with him. He felt like he needed 3 sessions, and there was layers to it. Now I realise that I can actually ask the higher self to go to the root cause, and it rolls up all the other ones. But back at that time, I wasn't too sure about the wording. And anyway, so we cleared that energy, we cleared that problem, and he called me about 3 months later, and he said, I just want to let you know, because he was engaged in a relationship. And because of his anger, he used to beat her up quite a bit. And because that was taken out of the equation, she broke it off with him because he no longer was violent, which is really interesting. And he said, I can't believe it. He said, everybody can't believe how much I've changed. And he said, my parents, barely recognize me. His work associates barely recognize when they're talking to him. He used to be very reactive. And he looked at their reactions and said, was I that bad? He didn't even realize how bad he was. And he told me he was going on a sabbatical for 3 months just to integrate everything and find himself.
Wow, that's really amazing. I have a memory of a man that I had a session with once too. And interestingly enough, his psychiatrist actually sent him to me, which I find astonishing, right? Because very often conventional, medical health professionals don't always celebrate some of our activities, but I've had the occasion where they've actually sent them to me. And I thought it was kind of amazing because when it was all over, the man said, wow, because it was the same sort of thing. It just was like, it popped like a bubble in him, and it all just left him, and he was completely different. And he said he felt like a noodle too. He didn't even know how to move his body because it was like the anger was so inside of him as like a construct. And then when it left, he even kind of was like, it's weird to walk. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, he said to me, later I found out, he said it was more helpful to him than 10 years of psychiatric treatment. And then I thought, wow, I wonder if that psychiatrist might not have sent him to me. If he'd have known, he basically lost a client.
Right, because he's healed. That's what I love this work so much. I had another one where I got a phone call from a gentleman, and he was really concerned about his wife, and somebody recommended that maybe I could help. And she was suffering from PTSD, and she had been shaking and crying for 2 weeks because of this incident that happened with a 13-year-old trying to commit suicide, jumping off a bridge onto the freeway. And it landed on her car and then fell and then off her car, and she ran over the child. And the child lived for probably 2 or 3 hours and then died. And she felt so responsible but I mean, fancy being at that time, right at that time. And anyway, so she couldn't stop shaking. She was crying for 2 weeks, and he was just at his wit's end. He just didn't know what to do. And so she came and had a session with me. And what it turned out to be was that they had a soul contract, and that she, in advance, before they even came in, this child was going to commit suicide to wake her parents up because they were very cruel and abusive to her. And she had been humiliated that morning at school by the school teacher. And her father had cut all her hair off in the morning for something that she had done. just some horrific stuff. But anyway, the bottom line was that they had a contract, and her agreement was that she would land on her car and that she would come to me so that she could help her cross over. And so when I asked her higher self if she could bring that soul, could find that soul, that 13-year-old soul, and bring her to us. And it took probably about, she laid there for ages, and the higher self kept saying, we're searching, we're looking. And then next minute, oh, we found her and we're bringing her in here. And then the next minute she was there. And so we called in her, her guides in the angelic realm and opened up the portal. And she actually visually gave this girl a hug, the one who had PTSD, thanked her from her heart to help her cross over, and thank her for living up to her agreement to help her cross.
So this is really, really fascinating. I've got questions. Wow. So what this indicates is that the young girl had the whole thing planned out. Certainly a suicide end, or maybe a lot of people out there may not understand this. I found this that there are contracts, but there's also exit points and possibilities depending on how different things happen. So it may have been the absolute way she was going to leave, or maybe just a possible way to leave. I do want to suggest that as a possibility out there. But she decided that if she was going to do that exit with a suicide, she was going to land on this woman's car because she already knew that she wouldn't be going into the light. And Debbie, that's kind of amazing.
Because of suicide, they don't always go into the light.
Right. Right. And why don't you, for our viewers and our listeners, talk about why sometimes that might be the case for people who take their own lives?
I know it's an interesting concept, because I didn't even realize that until I had done that session with her. And I was talking to somebody else who's a bit more on the spiritual realm side of things. And they said that, sometimes with suicide, because they're taking their own life, it's against the law of nature or something like that. And they don't always go into the light. They sometimes can get earthbound, or they go to a darker place in between, and until they sort some stuff out.
Wow. So she already either knew that was going to happen or was a possibility, and basically programmed or arranged a lifeline, right? How amazing is that? So this must have really changed that woman's entire life after this.
Oh my God. Because Robert, who's her husband, called me back a couple of days later, and he goes, I don't know what you did, but she hasn't stopped smiling since she came back from there. She felt so honored to be able to help someone to cross over and realize that, she didn't kill anybody, that it was a soul contract, and that soul contract was fulfilled, and that was part of her purpose. Yeah.
That's just amazing. And it's interesting to know that that you've assisted someone with PTSD, because I know that, some of our colleagues just hear PTSD and they wonder about the idea of doing sessions for them, particularly online. There's many of our colleagues who have issues about what's safe and what's not safe to do these sessions online. What's your take on that entire subject in general, Debbie?
I find it is so successful, and it's very easy. And when I talk to the client, and I do the interview first online with them and get them comfortable, and I explain to them that, I also send them a list of how to prepare for a session, and to make sure they've got somewhere comfortable to lie down and where they can have their computer close by. But I also, because it has happened a couple of times where it's dropped out, I also pre-warn them that if this drops out, you will stay in trance. And I put that into, when they're going under, that if anything happens, that you can sit up and reconnect. And as soon as you lay down, you'll be back in trance. And it's worked like a charm. And some people have even said to me that they feel more comfortable doing it in their own home, in their own energy, and feel, and it's so successful, just as successful. It's no different to having somebody in the room with you especially if you're intuitive, and I know you are, Candace, and I'd say most of the practitioners here on, on this line are all intuitive, because you are working with at such a deep level, and every time you take someone into trance, you automatically go with them, and you sense it, and you work with your intuition, and you know which way to direct, and for healing and everything like that. And I always ask my higher self for permission to connect with their higher self as well, so I get pure direction.
This has been my experience as well. And, there's this performance anxiety too. I mean, over the years, I have had people get on planes and fly halfway across the world for a session. Think about the pressure you put on yourself and the time involved and the expense involved with all that traveling, when, the ease of being able to sit on your own sofa and go deeply within your own self is pretty nice. But yeah, a lot of people still have questions about this possible disconnection. Have you had any other, disconnection stories you want to talk about? How it happened? Because I've found sometimes it happens for a reason, and that, of course, as always, and then how it turned out, rather than being a complete disaster, how maybe some disconnects actually played a part in the session.
Well, I think I mentioned one to you, which I was horrified at the time. And this lady was in Thailand on one of those islands, and the internet was very sketchy on and off, but she was pretty desperate to have a session. And so I said to her, well, if we do lose connection, I will call you, because I have gone into the past where people try to call you back and you're going backwards and forwards, and then you have to take them back through the relaxation again. So I thought, this is the better way to do it. So I already give them instructions right up front that I will call if we drop out. Anyway, this particular one was just pretty amazing, because, I took her through the relaxation, and she went back and she landed in this beautiful place. And she was describing these beautiful beings being around her. She was going through a lot of emotional trauma, and I think and it turned out her higher self took her to a beautiful place just to heal that. But anyway, next minute, everything goes blank, and I've lost her, and I'm trying to call, and I'm trying to call. And then I went, oh, well, I'm just going to wait for another 10 minutes, and then I'll try again. And at over half an hour later, she actually called me back. And she goes, that was the most amazing session I've ever had in my entire life. Her higher self took her through these beautiful healing, and these beautiful beings came and gave her messages. And she said she was just floating, and she was so happy, and it all ended just beautifully. And the angelic realm were there to support her on her journey. And I was like, wow, that's way better than I could have done. So it worked out for a better reason. And then she said to me later that she would like to have another session with me. And I said, I will do that one for free, because she did it for herself. And
well, yeah, that's great. That's great, though. But of course, as a practitioner, you and I both know these are self sessions anyway. We're there just facilitating and sort of holding the space for them to connect to deeper parts of themselves. But that's a lovely story. I have a story about a disconnect once that I also waited about 20 minutes before being able to reconnect. And the gal was telling me, it's the funniest thing. She had a delivery scheduled, and the delivery was supposed to happen later that week. And there was a mix-up on the day, and we lost connection on her end, and I couldn't get it back, and we were doing what we knew to get back. And she said she was going through the procedure of reconnecting and was planning on doing so when her doorbell rings. She has to go take care of this guy who's delivering something, where she literally has to get up out of her house, go take care of some stuff. It takes about 20 minutes. She comes back, connects with me again, and she says, that's great. Now that delivery is here and I don't have to think about it anymore, I feel so much better. And we just picked up right where we left off, which is how we programmed it to begin with. And again, the SC works with us online. The higher realms know what we're doing. we're reaching out and connecting quantumly, and they're still in charge, even when we connect in this way, don't you think?
Oh, totally. It just, it never ceases to amaze me how things unfold for the better. And you realize, because at the time you're sort of, that little yellow brain is going, oh no, this is half an hour. This is a long time to be just leaving her laying there wondering what's going on. And of course, the higher self does know better and gave her this whole thing, just like with yours. Everything is always works out perfectly. There's always a reason why things happen. And I've had others, drop out, but instantly come back in. And we've just taken up, and it's just been totally successful. What I
Yep.
find that with some people, if they have a bit of a problem with their Wi-Fi, I will ask her to turn the camera off, and I turn my camera off so the bandwidth, and I do that most of the time now, because I don't need to watch a person. Actually, I feel I can get more intuitive with that, and facilitate that and hold space a lot better when I don't have to look at them. More focused on.
That's a really great point. That's a wonderful point. While you were talking, I was thinking about another time that I had maybe a 10-minute disruption in connection too. Always, and as facilitators, we're always wondering what's going on and hoping for the best and assuming the best, but not really knowing until we make the connection back with the client. And when the guy reconnected with me, and we just went right back to where we were. And then when we got to the part where we were talking to the higher self about all of that, I asked about the disconnection. And the disconnection was, yes, we had to focus on just this particular part of his healing without any words, without any other distractions. And we disconnected you. They actually said, we disconnected from that. And I was marking the time, and I asked the fellow when it was all over, how long did you even think that was? And he was like, well, just a few seconds, right? I mean, he didn't even have a clue that it was like 10 or 11 or 12 minutes or whatever it was, because of course time is so different there. And it was exactly on purpose, and it was exactly what he needed, and it was exactly perfect.
I love hearing that. Yeah, because when people go into that space, they're in that no time space. So they've got no idea of time. They're just totally in the present moment of where they are. Yeah, it's great. It's awesome.
That's really wonderful. Well, maybe we'd like to address the fact that there are teachers out there. Your and my teacher, Dolores Cannon, really, when she was alive, didn't like the idea of doing sessions in this way. But, I found, and I loved and love my Dolores so much, and everybody who knows me knows that. But Dolores didn't like technology of any kind. I mean, not of any kind. She was drug kicking and screaming into having a digital recorder, even a laptop. She used her electric typewriter up until she, couldn't manage that one really anymore either. And we as humans, we're just very comfortable communicating this way and interacting this way, and we're growing and expanding. And I think maybe it might be time for colleagues of ours to consider that this is a really normal way to communicate, and a normal way to be able to offer sessions if they are comfortable and if their client is comfortable. Of course, if neither one is comfortable, then that suggestion is out the window. But many of us feel very comfortable doing this.
Yeah, and not only that, it opens up more the world to us. I have a client. She's actually been coming to me every month for about the last 12 months, which is crazy. But her higher self keeps telling her she needs to do more layers. And her regressions are just amazing. Some are on other planets and all sorts of things. But she says that there's no other way that she could have got a session over in Israel, where she is, with the mindset that's there. And she found me through this other person who had me on his show a couple of times and highly recommended me. And so that's the only way she could get to me. And so this opens our doors wide open to other people. And then you might have clients who've got families in other states, but they really have had their sessions with you and really want their family members or their friends to experience you, because that's what resonates. And so it just opens the doorways, and we can help and reach more people this way than any other way.
Interesting. Israel's come up a lot in our forum community lately as well. The country of Israel, the people there are really making a great connection to quantum healing, and a lot of people online apparently these days. Really, really interesting. Yeah, other countries too, where there's restrictions or about this kind of work in person. The internet affords a certain level of privacy of communication one-on-one, where they can actually feel safe to explore their own consciousness, where maybe even walking out the door isn't as easy or safe for them to do, in their own country, in their own neighborhood. That's a really interesting concept, isn't it?
It really is, because I have clients in the UK, in Germany, like I said, in Australia. It just never ceases to amaze me how they contact me.
Yeah, really, everywhere. Yeah, one of my favorite stories, I've said this before, but I started a session, ended up in her home, but I started a session with a woman in the hospital. She had no hope of going to an in-person session at all, and I'm fully, in my heart, I know that having the conversation that we did, as we know, even before you get into the session proper, stuff starts happening. And we were going to do the interview, and then we were going to do the session the next day. And by the time, between the time of the two, they actually released her and she went home. So she was able to do the session at home. I was connecting with her the next day, thinking she was going to be in the hospital, wondering how this was going to go. She said, I woke up feeling so well, they sent me home.
Isn't that amazing?
Right? It's such a gift.
So miracles, actually, that you read through the forum as well. It's so wonderful that everybody shares their stories.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, they think it's dangerous, and my question back is, well, because what? I mean, what is exactly that you think they're going to do? So you go into this brainwave state at least twice a day yourself when you're just going to sleep, when you're laying on the sofa or whatever. I mean, are you afraid for your safety when you're going to sleep or waking up? This is a normal state that you are in, and you either just go to sleep or you wake up. If for some reason you could never reconnect, for whatever reason, you would either naturally wake up or naturally go to sleep. And it's just, there's nothing else that's going to happen. You haven't been turned into a different being or anything like that. It's just you being very relaxed. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I just tell my clients, all it basically is the conscious mind and the subconscious mind connecting. And where you can't normally access physically a lot of the time, or most people, unless you're trained to, is to access their subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, to me, is the gateway to all information. And I just said, so all we're doing is just relaxing the conscious mind enough so it can access the subconscious, which has all the answers to everything, and also has the power, when we bring in the higher self like that, has the power to clear all the issues and to heal. And automatically too, when we're in a car driving, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but sometimes you get into a deep thought about something, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, how did I even get here? And I call it autopilot. My subconscious must kick into autopilot and take over and keep driving while I'm completely thinking out a problem.
Yep.
And that's a state that we go into when we're in trance.
That's exactly right. And I use the same example myself, and I also use this as an example. So it's just kind of automatic until or unless if somebody like crosses into your lane, boom, everything's out the door, and you wake up and you take care of business. You just do. Your reactions kick in, you take care of business, and it's just not a problem. And the same thing with this kind of work. I think it's a marvelous example. That's really great. Early when we were introducing you, you were telling me you took training with, I wrote it down really quickly. Will you tell me about it? You said IMDHA. What was that? Tell me a little bit about that and some of the other training that you've done, and how maybe you bring some of those skills into your BQH practice.
I do. The IMDHA was just the normal clinical hypnotherapy. And it stands for the International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association. Because when I come over from Australia, I didn't know whether I was going to continue this work here, and I wasn't certified here. And so I thought I need to sign up and get certified so I can practice here, because I know how important this work is, and how healing it really is for people. But in the meantime, like in Australia, I had done a rebirthing course where basically it's a breathing technique that takes you back to your birth process, where the birth trauma can originate from, or childhood trauma, but it never takes you back into a past life.
Interesting.
And I've done conflict resolution course that really helps me with people's problems when you're discussing things with people. And I've done matrix energetics, which is a healing energetic. You've probably heard of it. And yeah, so a lot of these modalities just automatically evolve into your process with your healing.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So yeah, one of the things Debbie said to me before we got started was she was doing BQH before we had BQH to describe what she was doing. And that's just the point. And I get so excited when people tell us that. And I want to talk about that in a moment, but I have one more question about the IMDHA. So were you saying to me earlier, I want to make sure I'm getting this correct, they already talk about doing sessions remotely or via telephone or online, or that was not? I thought there was a type of training that you got that already incorporated that, or was that just all you?
That was just all me.
Okay, got it. Well, I wanted to get that fact straight.
I didn't have any choice because I was asked to go on a show with a guy who calls himself the Galactic Historian, and he reads Akashic records and all of that stuff. But he likes to bring other people who work in different modalities. And a friend of his suggested that he put me on his show to talk about past life regression and the benefits and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of his members are all overseas, in all different parts of the world. And so he said, oh, would you be willing to do Skype sessions? And I'm like, sure. I'm not going to limit myself, because I just feel that this is part of the evolution of where we're all going. And if we can't get out to different parts of the world, or people can't fly to us, this is a great modality that I feel that on some level, a spiritual level even, has been given to us, so that we can reach more people can be healed, more people can get in touch with their I am presence through these experiences.
You know, you're so right. Haven't you heard, because we've talked about this in our forum, we've talked about it in other shows before, the internet is like a physical practice creation of what it's going to be like to telepathically be able to communicate with other beings. I mean, this has been put here for our spiritual evolution. So exploring consciousness using this medium is only natural, and it's almost a little can be maybe a little like the idea of superstitious. I mean, think about this. Think about when the telephone first came out. There was a great number of people who wouldn't touch the thing, right? They wanted nothing to do with that. And, you know, here in 2018, we might think that's just kind of quaint and silly. And maybe some of the same things may be going on there. And I want to emphasize, though, the fact that some people who are, you know, very emotional or not ready to do this kind of work unless there's an actual human next to them, of course, we support in all manner and in all ways to have a living, breathing human body next to you. And we aren't saying one is better over the other. We are simply saying there's absolutely a place for this in our world today. I mean, Debbie, don't you know people who do, they date this way, they play games this way, they go to school this way, we communicate brilliantly this way. You know, sometimes people in the community will say to me, well, you know, you must have a lot of support with what you do. And I'm like, yeah, but I still live in rural Kansas. You know, my support is through this medium primarily.
Well, I live outside of Olympia. I live in a little town, a one-horse town on 5 acres up on a hill. And so this has really opened the whole world for me to be able to do this work, because locally there's not too many people.
Right. And, you know, exactly. There are practitioners, you know, I know practitioners in Wyoming or, you know, in very out of the way places in Montana where there's, you know, you have to drive a long way to find another human being of any kind, let alone somebody who's interested in this kind of work. And so what that does is kind of also level the playing field. You don't have to be in a place like Sedona or some, you know, or Mount Shasta land or someplace where the spiritual people gather. You can explore and even be a practitioner and help others explore living anywhere you can get a decent internet signal. And I just love it. To me, it's very exciting.
Me too, and this is where, you know, because there's so many online courses, even spiritual online courses that come through the internet all the time, which you know, you would have to, if you really wanted to attend one of those courses, you would have to fly down to LA, Florida, all these different places. And the same with when I did the online course with Dolores. You know, Arkansas to Washington State is a huge, you know, and I went, I don't know if I really, you know, have the time to go down there and do that course. But if you can do a course like this in your own time, how beneficial that is. And I was so excited when you did the BQH and you're asking for beta testers and everything. I was like, yes, finally. It's opening up and evolving, and it's opening it up for more people to be able to do this without any restrictions or any limitations. Because I don't believe now, as we're evolving in consciousness, that there should be any limitations. There should be right choices and good perception of, you know, understanding of what you're stepping into, but really this just opens it up so much more.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was so excited to have you and all the other people. You know what I found really interesting is how many colleagues of ours were kind of in the closet about this. They, you know, they'd known that it wasn't something that was widely shared, and a lot of people like kept it a secret. Yeah, but don't tell anyone that I do this. And to me, in this age of uncovering deception and you know, trying to uncover truth, that just seemed silly to me. And I know that you were talking about, I want to go back to something you said earlier about, you know, safeguards and calling and stuff. You know, I've recently discovered that Facebook, as maligned as it can be sometimes, the calling feature with the messenger on Facebook, out here in rural Kansas, that sometimes I have a better audio signal with Facebook on my smartphone than I do with a cellular signal or a telephone signal. And a Facebook call is free. It's completely free.
My mother calls me from Australia through Facebook.
Yeah, and isn't that amazing? And so, you know, and these, both regular telephone and Facebook, etc., those are like secondary connections. If you can't make an internet connection, it's like, it's the plan B, if, you know, to stay in touch with your client. And I even had, I don't know if you've done this, when you were talking about bandwidth and everything, that's pretty interesting. I did a session with actually two elderly ladies, sisters, who lived together, and they lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and our connection was really kind of crummy. And they had, the worst part about it was the audio. So what we ended, I know it was kind of opposite. I don't know if it was their computer or what. And what we ended up doing was, I looked at them, I used the visual of Zoom, and we had the telephone, and they just had a regular telephone, and they were laying on the sofa, and they cradled the telephone on their sofa. So my audio was with the telephone, but I kept an eye on them with the camera, and that worked too. So you can be really creative doing this kind of work, and you don't have to stick with just one way of doing things.
That's amazing. I hadn't thought about doing it both that way. That's
well, that's why we compare notes, right? I've learned a lot of things from you today too. And I want to mention too, you know, the BQH class, that's all online too. And it's take it at your own pace. And hey, Debbie, you have a code for people who might want to take that course that could save them 10%. You want to tell them your code?
Yeah, my code, it's all in capitals. It's Debbie, DEBBIES 10.
Yeah. So if you use that code and you want to take the BQH course, head on over to quantumhealers.com/BQH, or look at the top, learn Beyond Quantum Healing, put in that code and save 10%. You can also put in the code N5D10 because they are also a sponsor of Beyond Quantum Healing. And I want to thank them so much too. Debbie, thank you so much for being with me today, being a guest with me today, talking about this very important subject. how do people find you except for, or maybe other than going to quantumhealers.com? What's your website? How can people find you?
My website is called innerdimensionhypnotherapy.net.
Okay.
And it's long. I thought, I need to change that.
Well, that's okay. It's not bad. I kind of like it. It sounds very adventuresome, your name and everything. So so thank you so much.
I just wanted to mention something else to you too.
Sure.
I had one of my clients, because a lot of people now are getting the calling. I think it's time for light workers to step up to the plate, because we're hitting a critical mass time period where change is about to happen. And this one client was saying, I really feel called to do, hypnotherapy, to do this type of work, regression work, because she knows how it healed her. Anyway, unbeknownst to me, this was before BQH came out. So she went and signed up, and she lives in Los Angeles, and she signed up for, I think it cost her $3,000 or something for a I don't know, I think it was like a 6-month course or something. I can't remember how long it was. Anyway, she got back to me, and I said to her, how did it go, Nikki? And she said, she said, I'm really disappointed. She said, it was so clinical. She said, there's no spiritual aspect to it. And so when BQH came out, I contacted and sent it to her. I said, if you really want to take the next step into the spiritual aspect more of being able to help people, I said, I really thoroughly, highly recommend that you do this. And she said, so she's still busy paying this other thing off. So when she gets back on her feet, but she couldn't believe how affordable it was. And she wished she had heard that and done that before she had done this other one. Because
having those skills is great though. And anytime you take any of those courses, you can bring them and use them in the BQH course, which is the current price for that is just $333. And then with the code either of Debbie's or N5D's, you can take $33 off of that. I want to say this too. BQH it's not a stagnant course. It's growing and it's evolving. And what we're doing is once a month we get together and we do live webinars. And the live webinars are going to be focused, some in-depth topic focuses, and then all those webinars are going to be put on the course. So the class is not static. It's not stuck. It's only expanding. It's not contracting, and it's not, stuck in a time warp. It's going to grow with you. And thank you so much for telling me about your friend and talking about BQH to others. Because, this really, a lot of people will say, well, I don't know anybody. I wouldn't know who I would do sessions with, even if I feel called to it. But see, when you learn this, the whole world's available to you, no matter where you are.
Yep. And then I'm finding that a lot of people now, because they're starting to awaken, and when they come to you and they have a healing session like that, realize that they've got some calling. They want to help. They want to be healers. Whether they're different modalities that they're drawn to. But I always recommend, like if they feel that they are drawn to do this, I recommend that they do BQH, because it's ever evolving. You're saying it's expanding, and as the consciousness starts to rise and awaken up and everything with your webinars, more people are going to add more to that, and it's going to continually evolve. And I think it's wonderful what you're doing, Candace. I'm just really, really deep gratitude for the work that you do.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, I couldn't be here without practitioners such as yourself, and we have a great community. And I'm a thorough believer in horizontal learning. I continue to take courses myself and expand myself, and I think we can all learn from each other. So thank you so much. So that is innerdimensionalhypnotherapy.net. Did I remember it right?
Inner dimension.
Inner dimension hypnotherapy.net, or just look up Debbie Smartt on quantumhealers.com. The links will be put below. Debbie, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me and everybody else today. And thank you everyone for listening, and I will see you on the forum, Debbie.
Thank you so much, Candace, for having me here.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.